All righty, welcome back to the Rebel Tribe podcast. Today's conversation is one that I think a lot of us don't realize we're ready for yet until someone finally puts words to that kind of restless feeling we've been carrying. So many of us are in a season of reinvention. I've been talking about it since December. We're changing how we work, how we live, what we want, who we're becoming. But what we don't often stop to consider is the spaces we live in may be quietly shaping those choices. They can be supporting us, or they might even be holding us back. I can attest to that because my office is once again a disaster because we're painting again. And yes, I'm sitting here going, I need my space back. Right? My guest today, Kim Costa, has spent decades working in residential construction, design, real estate, and through that work, she has helped thousands of people rethink their homes, not just as places to live, but as foundations for clarity, confidence, forward momentum. She's the creator of the Wheelhouse Assessment. She's a host on American Dream TV and the author of the upcoming book, Live in Your Wheelhouse. So if you're thinking this is a conversation about decorating or renovations, not exactly. It's about alignment. It's about listening to what your environment is telling you about the life you're ready to build next. So let's dive in. Kim, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, like I said, I am living your book right now because my space is not my space anymore and it's driving me insane. You said most people choose homes based on aesthetics, not alignment. What exactly does that mean?
Well, mostly what that means is a lot of people choose homes on the number of bedrooms and their price range and maybe the neighborhood or the area that they want to be in. But beyond that, they don't do as much of a deep dive into what do I like to do for fun and what are the three places I go to most often, and considering each person in the family or household, if they're partnered with somebody, what their likes are as well. So, it's about picking a home. That statement's more about picking a home because, oh, it has beautiful quartz countertops and it has a swimming pool, but perhaps one didn't consider the bedroom arrangement or the noise level or things like that, deeper things.
And when did you realize that our physical space might actually be shaping our confidence, our decisions, maybe even our sense of purpose?
Well, I think it really was an awakening way back in 2001. I was living on a beautiful horse farm. So aesthetically, really, really pretty, like to die for. But I was riding horses and I'm a golfer. I was an accountant and I'm a people person. And I'm an extrovert and I was living out in the middle of nowhere. So I broke my back. So it's like I had whispers of like, gosh, I'm kind of lonely out here. But then when it came down to it, I actually got a broken back by living out of alignment with what I really wanted to do, which was keeping my feet on the ground, being around people. And so no matter how beautiful that house was, it really was not a fit for me so much. And the wake up call was me breaking my back doing something I never should have been doing.
And I'm sitting here thinking, where is this place? I want it. I want it.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's called Clarity Farm, and it provided a lot of clarity for me.
So we talked a bit about your book, Live in Your Wheelhouse. What exactly does living in your wheelhouse really mean? Kind of beyond the literal home. What does that mean?
Well, it's more about just the home. So the tagline or the byline for the book is an empowering guide to stay, go, or reno. And it's a metaphor for the house being a representation of yourself, like your true self, where you are in this stage of life. So stay, go, or reno is not just about the home. It's also about like how is your life changing? How do you want it to change? What do you want the next 5, 10, whatever years? Like retirement it forces some changes, and empty nest forces some changes. Getting married, having a baby, these are all life changes. And so it's really like your home as a representation of you in this moment, not 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but how you really want to be living.
That makes sense. I'm going through a transition myself, as we discussed before we started recording, of my husband retiring. And many of my listeners, my audience is mostly 40 plus women. So
Mhm.
many of them are reinventing themselves right now. They're having that major life shift. The kids have moved out, the husband's retiring, they're retiring. How does our environment either support or sabotage reinvention, especially for these women that are in midlife?
Well, I can really relate to this quite a bit. A lot of my clients are from midlife to retirement. My husband is retiring. He's a bit older than I am. And I am, I've reinvented myself, so I'm going to keep going. But certainly can relate to this stage of life. And what I think the biggest thing is for folks that are getting to that retirement age, or they've raised children and they've done everything for them for decades, or they've worked in a career for decades and they've done everything for everybody else. But now it's time for them. It's time for them to think about, what is it that I've always wanted to do that I wasn't able to do because of other commitments? Maybe they're financially well off and they can start to travel, or they always wanted to have a house at the beach. And so they downsize locally and get a house at the beach or the mountains, or they want to visit their children and grandchildren who have perhaps moved away. And so they need a lock and leave kind of place. So, really, when you hit this point in life, I think it's amazing because we're living so much longer now. We have a whole nother lifetime that we can enjoy, decades, hopefully, with our health. And I think it's time to figure out, like, what did you like to do when you were younger that you kind of gave up? For me, it was writing. I started writing again. My husband's a golfer, and so we travel and play golf. I like to golf. Um, so I think you hit a certain point at, in your late 50s, which is where I'm at, and 60s and 70s, where it's time to figure out, like, while we're healthy and while we have the time and perhaps some money saved up, let's go do what we weren't able to do all those years.
Okay, that actually again makes sense because we are living in our little dream house.
Yeah.
But as we've gotten older, as we've gotten older, I'm looking at it now going, it's too much house. It's
Mm,
too much house. It's too big. The kids live far away. They don't really, they have their own careers. So we go
mhm.
visit them as opposed to them come visit us.
Right.
And it's a lot of work. And I thought I would live here forever. And now I'm looking at it, maybe not. Maybe not.
Right. Well, that's how it starts when it's just a little bit of discomfort or frustration with something. And you mentioned maintenance. It can become a physical issue, a time issue, a money issue when you have a larger home and you don't need the space for people to come home and visit. Now they're buying a house with a guest room to make sure that you have a place to stay. So you're now their consideration in their home for having you. They want a space for you in their home, which is wonderful, but now they're not coming home as much, and it becomes part of. So the areas are environment, like what community do you live in, health, entertainment, spirituality, romance, family and friends, career and job, and finance. So when one of those areas, it's like a wheel. If one of those the score becomes deflated, it's like you have a flat tire. And so as your life changes, your home kind of needs to change too. And if not, you'll start to feel frustrated or discomfort. And then you have to figure out, is this discomfort strong enough where we need to move? Or if my primary's on the main, can I just shut down the upstairs, so that they don't waste utilities and hire someone to do the yard and you can still live there? It's just becomes a weighing of all those areas.
Lots to think about.
Yeah.
You've worked with everybody from executives, entrepreneurs, families. What patterns, or are there patterns? Do you see patterns in homes where people feel stuck or burned out or disconnected from who they're becoming?
Yes. It mostly shows up as frustration. Um, Frustrated, like I've seen people walk into a kitchen and kind of start to argue with each other a little bit. And it's not necessarily about the kitchen, it's about changing lifestyles and perhaps a difference in what one person wants than the other in their lifestyle. And so they need to come to some sort of compromise. And that happens all the time when looking at homes. But I often see it as little points of pain points, frustration, discomfort, loneliness, health issues. So that shows up as emotions. And sometimes people can't put their finger on exactly, what's going wrong. Like I have a lot of friends and clients who are now becoming empty nesters, and they're just like, what? They're kind of lost for a couple of years until they find their footing again. And it shows up as, tears. I miss my kids. What's my purpose now? I have this big old house and there's no one here. And so sometimes the way that's solved is like, okay, well, I've started yoga now and I walk to my yoga place down the street, or I picked up painting again and they've turned study into a painting room, or like you started a podcast and now they're connecting with people all over the world. So it starts off as frustration, and that's a pain point that needs to be solved. And so that's where you have to look.
So, is there a way that our homes do keep us, maybe unintentionally, but they keep us anchored to an old identity that maybe we've already outgrown?
Yes, it can be that way. I mean, it's really up to the each individual. There's no right answer that goes across the board for everybody. Some people do not want to give up those memories, and their kids maybe come back and they want four bedrooms. I just helped a client friend upsize um, in later life because she wants her grandchildren to come back. I've helped people get a beach home or a lake home because it's a destination and they think the kids are going to come back. And some people just don't necessarily need to move or don't want to move because they do have all those memories. They do want their children to come back and be able to walk into their old room, or, bring the kids back and things like that. So it is individual for everybody. Some homes can keep you stuck, like especially financially, if perhaps you're looking to retire and you have a large investment in a home, and you could pull some of that money out and put it into, your savings to live off of. That home is keeping you stuck as far as, draining your financial resources. And that can happen in any one of those 8 areas.
So, if we can't move
Mhm.
or we don't want to move and we can't renovate, are there things we can do? So, maybe small but
Yeah.
meaningful shifts that we can make to change the energy or change the function of our space?
Absolutely. There's a whole array of things that you can do. And so I've had clients, let's see, they had 3 kids. And so they just needed a smaller dining room. And then they had a living room that ran the whole expanse of a house. And then the kids all started getting married and having children. So they went from a family of 5 to needing, 12 and growing. And so they switched the dining room with the living room and put the table along the fireplace. It was really cute. And now they've fit their growing family into a different room, and the dining room is now like a study living room that has doors on it that she uses for her podcast. And she just repurposed the rooms. So you could also, as styles change and personalities change, you may want to dedicate a room to, like, we loved our time in France. Let's turn this into like a themed, but not a over the top theme, but a few fun little travel knickknacks, on the shelves and things like that. It just kind of brings you, as your life changes and you gain experience, you need to kind of adjust your home to reflect who you are now.
Okay. I'm thinking of my office, which is so me.
Yes.
People come into my office and go, space, it's my
And I
it's my
think
space.
that's comforting for people, because if they know who you are and they walk into your home and you're comfortable being you and they like you, they don't want to have to guess like, some a bland type of interior that everybody else is doing. It just looks like, everybody else's home or many people's homes. I think people find a lot of comfort when they walk into your house and it's a pure example of your personality. It just makes them feel at home.
As I mentioned, we are, I don't remember if I mentioned it on the podcast or not, that I am considering whether it's time to move. But I have a lot of emotional attachment to this house. All of my grandkids they were raised here pretty much. My
Hmm.
kids lived here. Most of when the little ones were little, they didn't move
Hmm.
until the kids were in high school, basically. So I've had those grandkids here
Hmm.
most of their lives. There's a lot of emotional attachment.
Yeah.
Is
I
there a
can I can
way
imagine.
I'm trying to figure out how I want to put it. What is the biggest emotional mistake that we make when we're trying to answer the question of whether we stay, whether we go, do we just renovate? Because I'm feeling that right now. I'm feeling
Hmm.
that, I have this big yard where the kids used to play, and that is my biggest attachment here is there's so many memories in this house.
Mm.
What's the biggest mistake that I might make emotionally when I'm trying to answer the question of stay, go, renovate?
I think it boils down to timing. I think timing is the biggest mistake that people can make. If you're not ready to move, but people are and you don't have to move, then don't make that decision. Just, you can start thinking about it. You can start thinking about what if I were to move, what would that look like? What are my options? Maybe if it's into a different town, you go visit the town. You rent a home or rent even for a week, an Airbnb just to try out the new location. Um, on the other side of the coin, so you can move too quickly when you're not ready and have regrets, and then someone else is living in your house and you're really wish you hadn't sold. So don't be too hasty. But then at the same time, I have had some clients who waited way too long to move, and it became a health issue, um, and became a hardship on their children, to clean everything out and things like that. So I really think there's a sweet spot that you have to consider as to when is the right time to move, and it's somewhere between when you're getting the idea of the things would be better if we had a smaller yard and if we lived closer to an airport or whatever your criteria are, you start to think about what would be a better way to live. And then if you wait too long, it's like, oh gosh, I'm overwhelmed. I need to move now, but I haven't done the research. So I've waited too long to even start thinking about it. So this process is more about, and you can take this assessment every year however you want and just see where your scores come out on each level, and you write notes about whether this is a deal breaker or not. And if the wheel of life starts to look really flat, or there's like a something that's at a 0 or a 1, it probably means you need to move.
Okay,
Mhm.
need to check that out. I'm so glad that I am like in this period of my life because I can
Yeah,
use myself as so many examples
I
here.
love
So
it. Yes.
when the kids left, that one lives, well, they live like across the country now.
Hmm.
Um, and I was like, well, they'll come back and visit. And I kept their rooms and everything for the longest time. And then finally, I was like, they're not coming back. It's impossible for them to travel with their kids. Their kids are in school. They have jobs. It's so much easier for my husband and I, who he's retired now. I work from home, so
Hmm.
we can go whenever we want to.
Yeah.
And I changed their rooms into an office for me and like a little den study area for him. And somebody commented on that what was I going to do when the kids came back to visit, and actually kind of made me feel a little guilty
Oh no.
because I wanted a space for me now. I
Hmm.
mean, I had them here and then I had the grandkids here for years. So now I wanted a little space for me. How do you advise people who are feeling that little guilt, or how do you deal with the people that are trying to make us feel a little guilty because we're at that point in our life where we want a little bit more us from our space or from our life.
Well, it's not like you don't want to see them. Quite the opposite. And in fact, it was probably fairly painful for you to realize they're not coming back as much. And you could either look at those empty rooms every day and not have a space for yourself, or you could accept the fact that they still love you and they still want to see you and they have space for you in their homes, and you get to visit them and go to the grandchildren's activities that they can't miss. I've been there. They can't miss baseball games and gymnastics and all the musical recitals and all the things that they need to be at. So you go there and they love for you to come, I'm sure. But every day that you have to, look at those rooms that really aren't being used, and you have a better use for them for your office and a space for your husband who's now retired. And there's space in every home. This is under the romance section. There's space in every home for you to be together, and there's space for you to be individuals. And that's what makes a marriage work well. I mean, in most cases, people would need to be individuals and have their, what if he wants to watch something you don't want to watch? And what if you're working on something, but the TV's on? You need your space and you're going to use that many, many times a week. So if they did want to come back and visit, um, I'm sure you could figure out some kind of arrangements, or, I mean, not the worst thing in the world, to get some beds in the basement or some extra space that you have. I'm sure that you would figure it out if they did decide to come visit. So I wouldn't worry about what other people think. That is the whole point of the book. You cannot do what other people want you to do. That is when you get in trouble. Because how many times a week would you say, gosh, I wish I had somewhere to put all my papers. I keep working at the kitchen counter and I have to clean up for dinner every single night. And now I'm all confused as to where I was at in my project. That's an everyday complaint that you would have. But instead, you have your own room now.
Let's talk a little bit because you mentioned it. So let's talk a little bit about those of us who do work from home. Because again, so I live out in the middle of nowhere at the far end of a private dirt road, and I am fortunate. I have my office.
Hmm.
Internet out here is sketchy at best,
Mm.
but and I have had to walk around with my computer like, where's the best spot
Can you
that
hear
I
me
might
now?
get a connection? It's a little crazy. How does workspace design impact confidence and clarity and follow through for those of us that are working from home? I know it bothers me. It makes me feel less than professional sometimes when I have to look at a podcast guest and go, yeah, my internet's not working. I'm sorry, but it is what it is. And how does that impact all of that?
Well, I mean, so those are considerations under the career part of the wheel of life. And so when people, I have some, executives and tech type folks who run meetings, from their home, and so many of us work from home now, that they have to have, like, it is like, do they have like the best internet in that neighborhood possible? I absolutely need it. I have four screens going. And I mean, that is like number one. That's a huge consideration for them, right? Because it's their job. And I have other folks who are creatives, and they don't really want to be around a lot of people or hear noises. Some people even make like a she shed in the back where they write or paint, or, get a remote office from the home if they are work at home people, just to be away. So it depends on that person's personality. I myself am a creative. I used to be an accountant for 25 years. So said no one I should ever be an accountant, but I did it. And I was okay. I was good at it, but I was not meant to do it for 8 hours. So my office has lots of light. I have several creative projects going on. So I have tables, but then, in a podcast space. But if someone was very, very structured, they would walk in my office and think, um, I could never work in here. But I could never work in a really structured, clean, I won't say sterile because that it sounds so negative, but some people really thrive with everything in its place. That is not me. And so each personality, accountant needs a different workspace than a creative. Um, because our brains function different ways. If you put away my project that I have laying out, that I haven't finished because it takes several weeks, I will be so lost. And so I need that visual reminder of what the project, what the end result is that I'm thinking of. The accountant wants to probably file his or her items away. And so each working space needs to be exactly what that person needs.
So how stressful is it to just basically force yourself to adapt? Because I said I'm not going to move just because I have sketchy internet. And if that was the only consideration, I wouldn't even be thinking maybe it was time. I've
Hmm.
just learned to look at my guests and go, okay,
Yeah.
we'll try again. And it doesn't
Yes.
really bother me anymore, but sometimes it's still stressful. So how stressful can that be for the people who just don't have any way to change their location and they have whatever it is that's driving them insane?
Well, I mean, I'm a big proponent of option A, B, and C. So it's A, know that that's going to happen. In your case, explain to your guests and that, sometimes the internet might get a little fuzzy and we'll just wait a moment and it'll come back. Or you call a technician and see if there's something like a booster that you can put in the middle of the house that takes your signal and boosts it. So option B or option C is go to a little co-working space that have those amazing uh, Wi-Fi signals and little private rooms where you could bring your laptop computer and your headphones and maybe your microphone and just spend the day batching your podcasts. So you certainly not necessary to move from a beautiful place. Sounds lovely at the end of a lane, nice and quiet and peaceful. Oh my gosh. So you just have to figure out another option to fix that problem if there is one.
It sounds from what you've been saying about all the people you've helped that you probably have thousands of stories. Is there a moment when a physical space change did directly unlock a personal or a professional breakthrough?
Let's see. Let me think about this. Well, I mean, I do have one of my favorite examples of a fellow living in a family home, a large home. After divorce, he raised his children there in the same school district as his former spouse, and so wanted to keep that unity, even though they weren't in the same home anymore. Wonderful family. But then the kids moved away, they had children, and they weren't coming back as much. He didn't need the space. He was maintaining a yard, and all the families moving in were younger. And so he wasn't necessarily involved in the social activities anymore, even though they were friendly. He was, of a different era. And so we sold that home and moved him to within walking distance to a little cute little downtown area where he could walk and meet friends for dinner and a lock and leave townhome. And he started traveling to his family home in a different state and ended up buying, since he downsized, he ended up buying a second home there. And now he travels all over the world. And I get photos of where he's been and him with his grandchildren and weddings and different places in the world. And he's just living his best life. He was kind of bored and lonely prior to that. Now, those are my words in a perception. He just needed a lifestyle change. And nicest person. And I think he's just, living his best life now. So I think it was a product of his environment.
Hmm, glad to hear that worked out for him. I know what it's like when the kids all move out.
Yeah, many of us do. Mine are gone as well.
You mentioned that our spaces can even influence our spirituality, and I find that kind of surprising, actually. How does that work? How do intuition or faith or inner knowing show up in a way that people relate to our homes?
Well, so of the 8 areas, this is probably the one I see the least, but I do think it's an important area. And it is the number one area for some folks who, for example, in a town fairly close to here where I grew up, there's a large Jewish community, and many of the members of the synagogue need to walk to services. And so that is the number one reason they're buying that home is its proximity to their synagogue. So that's, one example where it would be primary. But in most cases, spirituality is your comfort level, the amount of nature that you have around you, your groundedness. If you are a churchgoer, is it close enough? I once lived in a home that my church was over half an hour away. It took me longer to get to and from the services than I actually was there. And so, having friends over for different meetings, it was a long way to drive. And so it really prevented me from hosting anything at my home. So that did affect my spirituality. So on that farm, I think I rated I rated that very high for the environment as far as spirituality because the geese would fly over and the deer would be walking through. And it was like I was one with nature out there. And so the spirituality aspect of that home was more about being one with, um, you know, the nature and the earth, and so that was spirituality to me. So that it's just they say that it's definitely not like the first thing that you think of, but the key to happiness is finding something bigger than you, whether it be helping other people or feeling, you know, enjoying nature and things like that. That is like one up on Maslow's hierarchy. That's getting up towards the top. So if you do have that element in your home and everything else is going well, it's like the cherry on top of the sundae.
So do you think our homes can maybe be signals that are nudging us towards the fact that it's time to change, maybe before we even consciously admit that we're ready?
Yes, they can be. You can get the feeling that you're stuck in a phase of life, or that you're not even sure exactly what you want to do next, but you're just feeling that there's an emptiness or that something's just not fitting. And so, I mean, I think when you pull into your driveway, um, it could be who's in the house. It could be, so that's a foundational issue, which is myself. Who am I? Mastery. What skills have I mastered? Like, what am I good at? Mission. How am I helping other people? And then mate, like who's in the house with you? Who do you allow in the house? So sometimes, if you're pulling up to the house and you're getting a feeling like, oh, I'm going to be so frustrated with this or that, then that's a stuck feeling that's in your home with you, and that something needs to change. It could be not enough room in the kitchen. It could be mold, It could be um many, many different things. But as you pull up to your home, that feeling of being stuck or dread or lonely or sad, if that's how you're feeling in your home, that's a key indicator that something needs to change.
I'm just sitting here thinking of we travel a lot and I'm good for about 4 days and then it's like, okay, I want to go home.
Oh, yeah. I always say to my husband, it is so fun and great to go away, but boy, is it great to come home. You know?
4 days is about my limit. And then it's like, okay, I'm
Hmm.
ready to go home now.
Yeah, some people say 8, some people say 12, some people don't want to go anywhere. It's all individual. Everything's individual. It's just whatever floats your boat.
Okay, so maybe I'm not ready to move after all. Okay.
You know what? You know what's a great indicator, and this happens to me all the time. Sometimes, I just like a little variety. I like to get away for a couple of days, and that's how you feel when you come home. It really, like, my husband and I just took a couple of trips in December, and I would always say, gosh, it's so great to go away. But then around the fifth day, maybe it's 5 or 6 days for me, I'm ready to come home. And then when I get home, I was like, that was so fun and so nice, but I'm so glad we're home now. I didn't want to stay away. And that's when you're glad to be home, you know that you're living in your wheelhouse.
Okay, so maybe I'm not ready to move.
Maybe not. You might could just tweak a few things.
So for someone who is listening and is feeling restless but can't quite name why, kind of like me, I was like, okay, maybe it's time to move, but maybe not. What's one question that they should ask themselves about their space after hearing this episode? Like this week, what's something they should ask themselves?
Well, I think it's really good to be able to walk through their home. And I have a little lifestyle lift assessment. It takes like 10 minutes. And if they want to print it out and or put it on their computer and walk through the home, it kind of guides you through each room and what is the function of the room, and is it meeting that function? Is there some type of rearrangement that could happen to help you uh, make that room function better? Is the function old? Like, is it no longer serving the purpose that it once did? And so maybe there's some space that's in, it could be even a corner of a room that's not being utilized. Like maybe a reading nook somewhere could be something someone uses instead of like it used to be the children's study desks. Maybe make it a cute little reading nook and put some bookshelves in there and make it your quiet space to read your favorite book or do your hobbies, your cross stitch or whatever it is you like to do. Um, so I just think, repurposing, remodeling if you have to. Um, and if you really, really are stuck and there is no way around it, like it's a location issue, like somebody got a job transfer or it's a health issue and the only answer is to leave the home, that's when it's perfectly clear. But otherwise, there are other options.
And can we get a link to that assessment? Because that might be
Yes, yes,
great.
absolutely. I will send you the link to that so that people can start to ponder. I think that's the best thing people can do is don't make a quick decision, don't wait too long. Just be looking at these things and you might be able to improve your lifestyle a little bit along the way and you won't have to go anywhere.
Sweet. Yes. And I will post that in show notes, people, so that you can try that assessment. I might do that myself. You
Yeah.
never know.
Yeah.
If you could leave us with just one truth about reinvention and environment, what would it be?
I think that your home should be a reflection of you, not just aesthetics, which is, I think, is really important. It makes people feel comfortable as they come in the door. It makes you feel at home. Um, It should be a reflection of you at your stage of life and the functions of the rooms, the decor in the rooms, um, and the aesthetics need to match exactly what you're needing in that lifestyle. And I think you can't go wrong if you just examine that. I mean, um, most likely you're going to stay put. But if you can tweak a few things and get, 5 years of enjoyment out of a room that you wouldn't have otherwise used, if, for example, the old bedrooms that you had and you turned one into an office, you use that all the time now, as opposed to walking by and reminiscing um, about what was. You're living in the present moment and maximizing your potential in your home.
Well, I'm really glad that we connected. And I really do thank you so much for this conversation because I have been feeling like maybe it's time. And so I know that if I'm at that stage in my life where I'm looking at, okay, I live in the middle of nowhere on a dirt road in a big house and I'm old. Do I really want to stay here? And after talking to you, I think maybe I do.
That's good.
But I think there are a lot of people out there listening that are going to walk away seeing their homes and themselves a little differently. So if today's episode stirred something in you, my Rebel Tribe ladies, I want to invite you to pause before you rush out to fix anything. I'm going to post the link to that assessment. Please take it and walk through your space this week and ask yourself one simple question. Is this environment supporting the person I'm becoming, or is it reminding me of who I used to be? And you'll find the links to all of Kim's work, the assessment. And do we have a link to your upcoming book?
Yes, it's a pre-order link right now, and very, very soon it'll be an actual order to live in your wheelhouse. It'll be out in March.
Great. So I will post links to the assessment and the pre-order link to the books in the show notes. And please, if this episode resonated, you know what to do. Share it with someone who's in that season of change. Leave a review. It helps more women find these conversations when they need them the most. And as always, thank you, ladies, for being part of the Rebel Tribe, where we don't follow the script, we rewrite it. And I will see you next time.